Hi, and welcome to another episode of SWITCHCast, a podcast delving into the world of film brought to you by the team at Switch. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Charlie David Page.
I'm Daniel Lamon.
I'm Jake Watt.
And I'm Chris Edwards.
It's Thursday the 15th of February 2018.
On this week's show, we discuss the game-changing move by Netflix with the release of the Cloverfield Paradox.
And Sydney's Mardi Gras Film Festival kicks off today. We'll take a look at the massive lineup.
And we'll Dewey your decimal with a super hot, sexy, fun discussion of all of our favourite books about film.
And as always, all our reviews and giveaways.
Let's leap straight into the Marvel jungle with Black Panther. Jake hunted this one down, so is this the powerful beast we've all been hoping for?
Black Panther has finally arrived. Shepherded by director Ryan Coogler, it follows the events of Captain America's Civil War, with T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, returning home as King of Wakanda, a purely African nation masquerading as a developing country. Secretly, it is the world's most technologically advanced due to vibranium, an alien mineral. T'Challa quickly finds his leadership challenged by a range of villains, like tribal leader M'Baku, played by Winston Duke, arms dealer Ulysses Claw, played by Andy Serkis, and a mysterious adversary with ties to Wakanda's past, Eric Killmonger Stevens, played by Michael B. Jordan. To avert global catastrophe, T'Challa must team up with his genius sister Shuri, Letitia Wright, his former lover Nakia, Lupita Nyong'o, his bodyguard Okoye, Danae Gurira, and an American government agent, Everett K. Ross, played by Martin Freeman.
My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze. I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all. What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
The good stuff? The screenplay for Black Panther touches on colonialism, the current immigration crisis, and the struggles of African Americans in the US. The bold Afrofuturist look of Wakanda's people, cities, and vehicles bursts with colour and richness. Women are represented strongly through the performances of Lupita Nyong'o and Danae Gurira, members of the Dora Milaje, an elite all-female fighting force. Letitia Wright is likeable in a role similar to James Bond's Q, and Michael B. Jordan has charisma to spare as Eric Killmonger Stevens, an American Black Ops soldier with dreadlocks, ritualistic tribal markings, and actual motivations and shit, which is really rare for a Marvel villain. The bad stuff. Despite some interesting themes, the driving storyline is yet another Sins of the Father tale from Marvel. The script has plenty of narratively clunky moments, and the fight scenes are mediocre, ranging from murky to rapidly edited to that weightless, rubbery body CGI style. Most critically, Chadwick Boseman's performance and his character's journey are boring. Marketing hype aside, Black Panther is another formulaic Marvel origin story, with a screenplay that occasionally stumbles, a few forgettable action scenes, and a dull hero vastly overshadowed by a supporting cast. But the film's strong visual design, dynamic female support characters, and charismatic villain are something to relish here. Depending on what your expectations are, this film is either going to be a cultural moment or merely a small step in the right direction for Marvel movies. 3 stars.
This is an odd film. I felt quite similarly about Black Panther as I felt about Wonder Woman. The sense of the film itself is relatively generic in terms of its narrative and in terms of its the technical filmmaking, though I kind of felt like Patty Jenkins had a better handle on the spectacle than Ryan Coogler does in this. But the kind of undeniable fact about this film is that the cultural importance of it is actually, I think, greater than the film itself. The friend I took to see it, we both really enjoy it, and like it's a really enjoyable film. Like as far as the Marvel universe goes, it's easily one of the better Marvel films. You just kind of end up being disappointed by the fact that it follows the same hero's journey, it has the same technical faults, and it doesn't really kind of break the mold. But that's just in terms of the structure of it. In terms of what it represents in terms of African-American representation, representation of women, strong female characters that actually take center stage in the film, which is really something that Marvel has never been good at. Like, it's not just you get, like, in the case of like Tessa Thompson in Thor Ragnarok, she gets maybe 1 or 2 good scenes, But the collective work of Lupita Nyong'o and Dana Guerrera and Letitia Wright is significant.
Yeah.
But realistically, for us as Anglo-Saxons who get to watch ourselves represented on screen a lot, the significant importance for people of African American or African descent to be able to see themselves on screen as heroes is something we cannot possibly understand. The disappointing thing about the film is that the film is not as big as what it represents, I think.
And how do you judge a movie like this, really? It's kind of like, do you judge it by, I guess, the important steps it takes towards diversifying the cast and the characters of these Marvel films? Or do you judge it based on the technical merit, like whether it's a good movie, like, whether it's well written, whether the action scenes crackle and stuff? I've read a ton of comics and I've seen like a ton of movies. So I kind of, come from both worlds when I look at these type of things. And for me, it's kind of a bit of a weird one. To be honest, like who isn't bored by the whole sort of Marvel, daddy issue thing where it's like, my dad did some stuff that was pretty shitty in the past and now I've got to, make amends for it and stuff. That is like the theme of pretty much like every second Marvel movie, and all of the Thor movies are about that. And elsewhere, it's like at least one of the other movies like sort of touches on that kind of, sins of the father style shit. So
again, it's similar to Wonder Woman. It doesn't break the mold.
Well, it literally is similar to Wonder Woman just because, once again, it's like another group of people, they're isolated from humanity by choice in a technologically advanced society. And then they have to sort of integrate or choose whether they want to integrate with mankind. Like, it literally kind of is a similar story, so...
That said, though, I mean, I'm not usually one to want to give Marvel credit, but I mean, it's got the most remarkable cast and the most remarkable African-American and African-descended cast, all of whom are actually given something to do. Like, particularly... Who was your favourite cast member? Letitia Wright was my favourite, who played his sister. She just stole the whole film for me. But also credit in the fact that it's a political film, and not a political film just purely by the fact that there are people of colour playing major roles. It discusses the positioning of people of colour within the world and the way that they have been treated. And I actually quite love the conflict in the film of you have this African community without colonization who have all these technical abilities and these resources at their disposal, but they've never done anything to help the rest of their community across the world who have suffered incredibly for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And I love that conflict of, can you just sit there and stand aside when your own people are suffering, when you actually could offer help? I was really disappointed with how uninspired Ryan Coogler's direction was, because his work on his other films has been so extraordinary. But I do think that there is something, at least it has an agenda, and it goes for that agenda, an important political and social agenda, which is more than what Marvel usually does.
Oh, totally. I kind of wish, instead of just like breezing over those themes, which are really the most interesting part of the script to me, I just wish they'd explored them at a greater length rather than just, kind of resting back in the same old superhero versus his dark half style tropes. Anyway, you can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and Black Panther is in cinemas now.
Also out today is Lady Bird, the 5-time Oscar-nominated film from Greta Gerwig. Jess took this one in and filed this review for us.
My undying love and admiration for the splendiferous Greta Gerwig started back in 2010 when I first saw her in Noah Baumbach's Greenberg. Since then, I've watched her blossom as an actor, a screenwriter, and now a fully fledged solo filmmaker with Lady Bird. And straight out of the gate, bam! She's nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Set in 2002-2003 during the final year of high school for Christine Lady Bird McPherson, the iridescent Saoirse Ronan, Lady Bird is looking to the future, her life away from Sacramento, away from her school, and away from her family, to live a life of culture and experiences. But for now, she's stuck in the present, navigating those last few months, new love, new friends, and the manic relationship she has with her overloving yet overcritical mother, played to perfection by Laurie Metcalf.
Lady Bird, is that your given name?
Yeah.
Why is it in quotes?
I gave it to myself. It's given to me by me.
She has a big heart, your mom.
She's warm, but she's also kind of scary.
You can't be scary and warm.
I think you can. Your mom is.
So, you're not interested in any Catholic colleges?
No way. I want schools like Yale, but not Yale because I probably couldn't get in.
You definitely couldn't get in.
Does Mom hate me?
If you're tired, we can sit down.
I'm not tired.
You were dragging your feet.
You are so infuriating.
Please stop yelling.
I'm not yelling. Oh, it's perfect.
Do you love it?
You both have such strong personalities.
We're afraid that we will never escape our past.
Whatever we give you, it's never enough. It's never enough.
It is enough.
We're afraid of what the future will bring. We're afraid we won't be loved.
You can't do anything unless you're the center of attention.
We won't be liked.
Yeah, well, you know your mom's tits, they're totally fake. She made one bad decision at 19. 2 bad decisions.
And we won't succeed.
I want you to be the very best version of yourself that you can be.
Lady Bird focuses on that phase of life where, to quote Britney Spears, you're not a girl, not yet a woman. Sex is on the table, as is the future prospect of living alone for the first time, away from the family. Yet today, your mother still cooks you breakfast, you scribble the names of your crushes on your bedroom wall, and nuns run your life between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. It's awkward to say the least, so who better to guide us through this tumultuous time than Queen of the Adorkable, Miss Greta Gerwig. The voice in this film is undeniably Gerwig's, and she's lived it, giving it added depth and authenticity. A beautiful and loving eye and ear is cast over every frame of this semi-autobiographical love letter to youth and change. She's also assembled an impossibly perfect cast of Almost Famous that give the work the weight it deserves with a slight hint of familiarity. I've described Greta as almost John Hughes-esque for the 21st century, and as John Hughes and Greta's #1 fan, the future from where I'm sitting from this fabulous female filmmaker looks mighty bright indeed. 4.5 stars.
Well, yeah, Jess is completely right. This film is an absolute wonder. I mentioned it a few weeks ago on the podcast, but it is unequivocally already my favourite film of 2018. I think what Greta Gerwig does with her script and her performers and her direction is just fantastic. Like I cannot fault any single one of her choices on this film. It is a beauty.
Yeah, it's this wonderful little miracle of a film. It was this weird thing of watching it going, I've seen this film before. Like, I've seen these stories before, but I've never seen them like this. And the way that she approaches it feels so fresh and immediate, and it's such an astute observation on the process of growing up and your relationship with your parents and your relationship with where you come from and the petulantness of being a teenager. That it feels both familiar and completely original all at the same time.
Yeah, because no one in the world was crying out for another high school film, another film about, the last days of high school and finding out who you are and moving on to another stage of your life and fighting with your parents, blah, 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 blah. But this is the complete pinnacle of all of those stories. I think this is the best representation of that final year of high school, and that weird mix of it's a year where things move really quickly, but at the same time on a day-to-day basis feel like nothing's really happening, but all of these huge kind of events are floating around you, and it's the most interesting parent-child dynamic we've seen on screen in a very long time, because Laurie Metcalf and Saoirse Ronan are so fucking good.
Yeah, they're, for me, if I could, in their respective categories at the Oscars, they're who I would give the awards to.
Oh,
they're
100%.
Extraordinary. But I mean, the whole cast is fucking extraordinary. I mean, Tracy Letts is amazing. Lucas Hedges is amazing. Timothée Chalamet is, of course, wonderful, as we expect. Beanie Feldstein steals the film. Somehow just finds a way to actually steal the film from the rest of this extraordinary cast. We've seen this kind of film before, but the thing that lifts it out of the ordinary and makes it into something extraordinary is just how clear and how generous her work is on this film.
And anyone discounting the direction on this film is just so... I'm sorry, ignorant. It's sure it's a much smaller, more intimate, more delicate, banal kind of, not banal, but...
It's not showy.
But she does such interesting things with the camera. The color grading is really fantastic and really interesting. The way she uses 2 shots all throughout the film, she places 2 characters in a shot together as this kind of ongoing, recurring imagery that's really interesting, particularly between Lady Bird and her friend and her mum. She does fascinating things, but it's just not on a huge, massive scale.
Yeah.
So it's not getting as much respect as, let's be real, her male contemporaries will be getting.
Yeah. She's worked with some really great independent and idiosyncratic directors over the course of her career as an actor. And it's amazing watching this film and going, you've taken everything you've learned from them and wove it into something so original that nobody could ever imitate it. But also, I mean, the biggest thing to take away from recommending anyone go see the film, apart from that, it's fucking sublime, is it's so funny. It's screamingly
funny.
So funny.
Literally, Daniel and I saw it together.
We screamed so much.
We both screamed.
Like, I can't wait to see
so
it because
good.
I just think about this film and I giggle because I love how fucking funny it is.
It is one of the wittiest screenplays, and it's also, if you were a theatre kid or if in high school you ever approached a musical or a play of any sort, you will have some of the most intense, vicarious embarrassment and enjoyment you will ever experience.
Yeah. Lady Bird for president. Lady Bird for president.
She is my idol.
Well, I think Daniel and Chris are both big fans, and Lady Bird is in cinemas now, and check out Jess's full review at maketheswitch.com.au. Also out today is Stronger, a biopic based around the Boston Marathon bombing. The story focuses on real-life survivor Jeff Bowman, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, a pretty average guy who works at Costco, loves baseball, and is a bit of a shit boyfriend. To win back his ex-girlfriend Erin, played by Tatiana Maslany, he surprises her with a sign at the finish line of the Boston Marathon that she's running.
I'm gonna be there at the finish line for you. I'm gonna make a big sign for you.
Doesn't show up for anything. And then he shows up.
There was an explosion, and your legs, they're gone, bro.
Welcome home. Is it good to be back?
What are you doing?
Talking to you. What are you doing?
Dancing. You're trying to make a hero out of me.
You need to tell your family what's going on with you.
Take my mind, take my pain.
I can't do this. I can't do it.
This is the first time you're in this week and you had 3 appointments.
You just have to show up for once.
I showed up for you!
You remind me of my son. He died. Helping you made me feel like I helped my son. And for that, I am grateful.
You're grateful.
Unfortunately, Stronger is a very mediocre telling of a story that exemplifies the best of what came out of the Boston Marathon bombing. We struggle to connect with Jeff, initially because we meet him just minutes before the attack, and later because his actions frequently make him unlikable. The character is trying to present a macho, strong attitude to his family and the community as a whole, rather than asking for help. And even Jake Gyllenhaal's natural charm and the real-life Bowman's wit aren't enough for us to want to rally behind this character. On the other hand, Miranda Richardson takes the character of Jeff's mother Patty to the other extreme, the borderline caricature of an overbearing mother. The only cast members who seem to strike the right notes are Tatiana Maslany, who portrays Erin as a strong woman willing to call Jeff out for all of his bullshit, and Carlos Sanz as Carlos, the man who saves Jeff's life. The cast are only marginally to blame for these portrayals, though. What they've been given to work with is sloppy, with John Polono's screenplay an entirely underwhelming affair. Yes, Jeff's struggle was symbolic, but this script lacks real emotion, real people, and real empathy. For an event that incited countless tears, the soft side of Stronger is significantly lacking. 2.5 stars.
It's a bit disappointing to hear that this isn't quite the success that it is, considering the caliber of the cast.
You're telling me. I'm a big Jake Gyllenhaal fan, so it's horrifying to tell you this stuff.
But even just down to the fact that, I mean, it's directed by David Gordon Green, who has probably one of the strangest careers in American independent cinema, in that he started out making really beautiful, intimate dramas at the start of his career, and then somehow ended up in this weird whirlpool of Seth Rogen, James Franco stoner comedies, and has now come to this film. To hear that it doesn't quite hit the mark, it's both a surprise and not a surprise at the same time. It feels like it was one of those stories that could have the potential to be really exciting, the way that Peter Berg made Patriots Day really intriguing, or it could turn out to be exactly what it sounds like it's turned out to be.
I think the difference between this and Patriots Day is that this ends up focusing too much on Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Jeff Bowman, but not only that, turns his whole situation and his whole family situation into this big, bold and the beautiful storyline. Like, there's conflict between him and his family and his girlfriend Erin, and it's not about the struggle to deal with what he's gone through or anything like that. It's more of this conflict that he faces constantly with his family, and so many other issues like this stream of alcoholism that runs through his family that they never really talk about, and the fact that he's seen as this giant hero and keeps pushing himself into the spotlight even though it's clearly unhealthy for him, and it just makes him this entirely unlikable character. There's just no way that anybody watching this could possibly want to relate to somebody like that. It's really unfortunate.
But how is Jake Gyllenhaal? So we've spoken a bit about his, like, the treatment of his character in the film and its messy plot mechanics, but how is the performance itself? I've heard really great things.
It's okay. It's serviceable, but in the same respect, it's got nothing on other recent performances we've seen from him. It's definitely not got the complexity of something like his role in, say, Nocturnal Animals or what we saw of him in Nightcrawler. It's a very two-dimensional character, and so there's only so much he can do with that. To me, it's a lot of him being angry and frustrated and yelling at the world. So it's really hard to kind of judge that as a performance. It's not anything that greatly impressed me. It's also disappointing because this is the first film that he's produced under his new production company. So it's really kind of sad that it's such a lackluster affair for kind of such a talented guy.
He said he is very proud of this film, though, so there must be some, to a certain extent, for him at least. He says it seems like there's a sense of fulfillment about having worked on it. He says he feels it's one of the most important films he's worked on.
And I am excited that he's starting his own production company because he's such an interesting, fascinating performer, and he often doesn't get the roles or the kind of attention that I think he deserves. And with his stage career, I mean, he was recently in a production of Sunday in the Park with George, one of Stephen Sondheim's best pieces. So yeah, hopefully this is, sure, maybe a bit of a shaky start, but a start nonetheless for some more interesting things from Jake Gyllenhaal, because God knows he is the sexiest fucking man in Hollywood and one of the most talented.
Yeah, look, he hasn't always had the best track record in the roles that he's had, but yeah, I mean, I think this is unfortunately one of those ones which was not quite up to standards, and certainly the film to me just doesn't hit anywhere near where it should have. So you can find more in my full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and Stronger is in cinemas now. Also out this Saturday is National Theatre Live's Follies. Daniel kicked up his heels to take in this stage spectacular on the big screen. So did this production bring the house down?
Set in a crumbling New York theatre in 1971, at a party where women who once danced in the Follies in this same theatre reminisce about their past and commiserate the lives they never led, Follies is one of legendary composer Stephen Sondheim's most complex and least performed musicals. With no clear narrative, a cast of nearly 40 performers, 2.5 hours long with no interval, and characters in the twilight of their lives, it demands a lot from its audience. This is what makes it such an extraordinary work, though. A rich portrait of regret, lost dreams, and ghosts of the past, and why the National Theatre decided to stage the gargantuan work recently. And now we get a chance to see it for ourselves thanks to the National Theatre Live program. The production is equal parts spectacular and underwhelming. The design, which turns the theatre into something reminiscent of a war-torn ruin, is the perfect stage on which to watch these lost souls and the ghosts of their past, always present, search for meaning and connection. The cast are uniformly excellent, especially Imelda Staunton and Janie Dee as two friends torn apart by old flames that still burn. The direction, though, is a mixed bag. Major sequences are beautifully staged, but the device of having the younger selves always present isn't fully explored or clearly defined, not taking advantage of one of Follies' most interesting narrative devices. The chances of us seeing a major production of Follies in Australia is basically impossible, so thank goodness for this National Theatre Live presentation. It isn't for everybody, attested by the enormous amount of walkouts in my screening, but for theatre and Sondheim fans, it's not an opportunity to miss. 3.5 stars.
Okay, so, great review, Daniel. Good job. Proud of
Cheers.
you. Well
Thanks,
done. Follies, I'm really excited. It's a Sondheim I haven't actually watched or listened to a lot of, but I'm really excited. I love some of the songs. Love Sondheim. He's my artistic idol. I grovel at his feet. I love him. Anyway, whatever.
We all do. We're human.
Tell me about Imelda Staunton.
Oh, there's the interesting thing about Follies is that it doesn't have a protagonist because it covers so many narratives. It kind of eventually settles on these two couples that Imelda Staunton and Janie Dee play. But the character she's given, Sally, is this woman who believes that she has a life that she's very proud of, but deep down is so torn up by the regret that she has about not being in the life that she wants, which is basically to be with Jeannie D's character Phyllis's husband, Ben, who's played by Philip Quast. And so the coming together at this party is them seeing each other once again and reigniting her love for him, but also him remembering that what he wanted wasn't to love her, but to fuck her. So it's that great thing that Sondheim does where what this could have been in the hands of a lesser artist would have been about older couples coming together and reigniting their love and running off together. But no, this is Sondheim, so it's not about that. It's about the complexities of adult relationships and how they change over time.
Yeah.
And there are moments that Imelda Staunton has where she is the devastating victim within this story. She's the one that crumbles by the end.
And the one who gets one of the greatest songs in the history of musical theatre, Losing My Mind, which is one of the most heartbreaking, beautiful, incredible, insert every superlative possible here songs.
Her performance of it is extraordinary. But as great as Imelda Staunton is, the show kind of gets stolen by Janie D as Phyllis. She is one of those great Sondheim characters where everything she says is filled with the sharpest of barbs, and the way that she rips the meat to the bone off every person around her, especially Ben, is fabulous. I mean, it's partly the virtue of the character. She gets the meatier barbs, but what Janie D does with Phyllis is wonderful. National Theatre Live Follies is in cinemas now, and check out my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
Exclusive to Melbourne's Acme from Monday is Beuys, Art as a Weapon. This documentary takes a look at the visionary German artist 30 years after his death by using previously untapped visual and audio sources. Coming across as much a visionary now as he did in the 70s and 80s, Beuys offers insight on his provocative and challenging performance art. This chronicle is not a portrait in the traditional sense, but an intimate look at a human being, his art, and his world of ideas.
Finally, Eric Clapton Life in 12 Bars is in limited release from this coming Wednesday. From the Academy Award-winning team behind Searching for Sugar Man, this documentary is an intimate, revealing musical odyssey on the life and career of guitar virtuoso Eric Clapton.
I knew that I was different, and I didn't know why.
When it came to blues, there was nobody like him.
Before Eric, guitar playing in England had been very simple. Suddenly we heard something that was completely different. It was completely revolutionary.
We were recording with Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin.
The Beatles.
People started to idolize what he was doing.
White America had never paid attention to blues. Thanks to Eric, a lot of doors was open.
I thought it was the beginning. I didn't know it was the end.
There was always a lot of cocaine, LSD, mescaline.
I was full of hatred and anger.
It got to be a point of wondering what's going to happen tomorrow night.
It looked like he wanted to kill himself.
I was in absolute denial about my alcoholism. Music saved me.
This is the story of one of the most influential musicians of our time, as told by those who know him the best, including B.B. King, Jimi Hendrix, and George Harrison.
Now let's check out the upcoming films in our trailer wrap. Here's Solo, a Star Wars story.
I've been running scams on the street since I was 10. I was kicked out of the flight academy for having a mind of my own. I'm gonna be a pilot. Best in the galaxy.
Hey, kid. I'm putting together a crew. You in?
That's yes.
I might be the only person. Who knows what you really are?
What's that?
Look, it's a teaser, so we don't get...
Yes, it is just a teaser trailer.
We don't get much. I mean, it looks fun. I mean, the intrigue with Solo really is just seeing if it turns out to be a film at all, because of the amount of behind-the-scenes craziness that's happened with the damn thing. And so far, my opinion on the recent resurgence of the Star Wars franchise, the saga films have been excellent, and the Star Wars story films have been turgid, ugly, horrid messes. So, I mean, I'm hoping that Solo doesn't take itself anywhere near as seriously, and this trailer does look like it might be some fun.
Who's the main dude? Who's the main actor again? It's like
Alden Ehrenreich, who is I was going to talk about him because I'm so worried. I'm so worried because Alden Ehrenreich, my boy, should be an Oscar winner by now for his one big role in Hail Caesar, which was fantastic and one of the great comedic performances of the 21st century. But besides the point,
he's gorgeous.
I'm so worried that this is going to blow up in his face. I'm genuinely so worried. After all of the
I feel exactly the same way,
tomfoolery surrounding the production behind this film, I'm really worried that he's in some way going to be the victim, I guess.
His voice, that was the main thing for me in this teaser. There's just something about the way he does Harrison Ford's voice, which just sounds off to me. It was sort of either too mumbly or something, or it was too much like he was imitating Harrison Ford's vocal cadences or whatever. And it was only a small part of the teaser, but to me that was the one sort of sour note, I guess.
Weirdly, the trailer has had a lot of criticism for him not appearing to be like Harrison Ford, which is kind of just a ridiculous criticism because Harrison Ford can't be like Harrison Ford.
It's a trailer that goes for 1.5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where it's you have to judge a trailer on the fact that it's a trailer, not judge a trailer on what the film is going to be. As a piece of advertising, it's actually quite effective. It's one of the better blockbustery trailers we got from the Super Bowl period. It looks really great. It looks like fun.
Yeah, you're right. It's fun, which is nice.
Yeah,
it's a nice
realistically, if as a trailer app, we just kind of go looking at it, it's actually, I'm excited to see it. I'm intrigued to know if it's going to be a mess, but I'm excited to see it.
I'm excited to see it mainly because Phoebe Waller-Bridge is in some way involved, and no one listening to this podcast will know who Phoebe Waller-Bridge is, but she's just really great. Go look her up. I'm not saying anything else. That's it. Bye.
She's playing L337, which to me sounds somewhat robotic. But
she's
robot. The series' first female droid. It's really great. Women can be anything these days. Isn't it inspirational?
Even androgynous machines. Isn't it amazing?
Considering his opinions on BB-8 and more importantly the Porgs, I can't wait to hear what Jake thinks of the new addition to the Star Wars universe.
Wait, Jake, did you not like the Porgs?
Oh man, the Porgs were just the worst.
Do you not know what joy is?
I didn't hate the Porgs in the actual movie. I just hated the marketing around and the excitement around Porgs. I hate people enjoying things. That's my
I mean, been there, pal. Been there.
We need to do a supercut of all of the references of all the things that Jake said about the Porgs in the months lead up to The Last Jedi, because there were some amazing comments made by this man about these small, tiny, flightless fairy things.
I have sort of one advanced thing to say about Solo. Donald Glover looks really cool in this.
Oh, yes.
Donald Glover playing Lando. It's kind of funny because the same thing applies. Donald Glover doesn't really look like Billy D. Williams or act like him, but at the same time, Donald Glover pops up wearing a cool coat with a pretty rad mustache, and everyone's just wow, Donald Glover is kind of the standout of this slice of the movie.
Donald Glover is finally getting his moment, and I am here for it.
Yes. Particularly with that yellow lining in his coat. I'm yes.
Well, we will definitely get Donald Glover. We will probably not get the Porgs.
You don't know that. We might get the Porgs. You don't know that.
Cannot know for sure, but we will find out on the 24th of May when it hits Australian cinemas. Now, let's take a look at Venom.
Everyone's got their thing. Maybe it's a breakup, a death, an accident. Whatever it is, you used to be one thing. Now, you're something else. We all have our own problems. Our own issues. Our own
This trailer has been copying a lot of flack because it doesn't actually show Venom. It just shows a lot of Tom Hardy sort of running around and pulling like werewolf faces, and Michelle Williams like with a concerned expression on her face in her role as like sort of worried wife.
Again, it is a teaser trailer. It is another teaser trailer.
That shot of Michelle Williams had me so genuinely confused because I had forgotten that she was in it. And I was like, oh, who's this Michelle Williams lookalike? Why is she here?
I'm looking forward to you taking this observation and taking it further into the next trailer, Chris.
Like the main thing for me with Venom was the fact that like, and which I think they've actually like shot themselves in the foot with this, is like casting Tom Hardy, I think was a mistake. Because from this trailer alone, like Tom Hardy's like an awesome actor. He's pretty well liked. He's charismatic and stuff. But the character of Venom, who's like, if you haven't read the comics, Venom is basically just like this big, black, gooey Spider-Man on steroids with bad teeth. So Tom Hardy for this movie is going to be entirely covered in like CGI. He's going to be like a CGI character essentially. So the fact that people are kind of saying, hey, you don't see enough Venom in this movie, I think that's going to be the problem with it. Just because like you're going to have like people who want to watch a movie who are, you know, adults, and they want to see some acting and stuff. And then you have, I guess, the fans of the comic who want to see this big black CGI goo thing. So
the world is truly torn.
I know it is fucked up. And Ruben Fleischer is he's the director of this, and like this guy has directed Zombieland and he's directed Gangster Squad. And it's like, does Ruben Fleischer have, I guess, like the touch to be able to evenly like sort of divvy out his Tom Hardy and his black goo to this movie?
The trailer does kind of sell the film a little bit like it's Venom Begins.
To me, it could be like sort of any kind of like, it could be any monster movie. It could be like a trailer for the Hulk, or it could be a trailer for like a werewolf movie, or it could be whatever. Like it's just there really is kind of nothing sort of Spider-Man-y or Venom-y or whatever about it.
I think as far as we're all concerned, the less Spider-Man-y it is, the better. This is one of the few Marvel films that Sony/Columbia Pictures is producing, so it's kind of interesting in that regard to see what they will actually do with it, how they'll handle it.
How does that work? Is that still part of the MCU? Or?
Because Sony still owns the rights to Spider-Man. Spider-Man Homecoming was a co-production between Sony and Marvel. So that means that all of the characters associated with Spider-Man are still owned by Sony, and Venom.
So does Venom have to acknowledge that all this kind of like aliens invade the Earth like every 2 seconds in this?
I think they will ignore a lot of it, to be honest.
I don't think they've made it clear whether or not this is going to fit into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I suspect that it won't.
Well, we can catch Venom in Australian cinemas from the 4th of October. And finally, let's take a look at I Feel Pretty.
Let's be honest for a minute. No matter how many times we hear, it's what's on the inside that matters. Women know deep down, it's what's on the outside that the whole world judges. I've always wondered what it feels like to be just undeniably pretty.
Are you okay? You hit your head pretty hard.
Wait, that's me. That's me. Oh my God, do you see this?
Yes?
I'm beautiful!
Who's that sexy thing I see over there?
I know you don't recognize me.
You guys, it's me. Renee.
What's happening?
Oh, full spin.
What can I get you?
Yeah, two tequila.
That's gold.
Number 118. What's your number?
That's really clever.
That's clever.
What's your number? Give me your phone. I'm going to give you my number.
Are you still talking to me?
Don't chicken out now, son.
If you had come to me with this film about 5 years ago and said Amy Schumer is making a feature film about this, I would have been all for it. Because Amy Schumer was great. Her sketches are on point, they are hilarious, they are pointedly feminist and aware of a lot of societal issues. But in the years since then, it's become increasingly clear that Amy Schumer herself may not be those things. There's been increasing flecks of racism in a lot of her work. Snatched, I never saw because I heard such truly awful things about it. Her film Trainwreck was pretty good. It was good. But Bill Hader kind of stole the show, and so did Tilda Swinton.
And John Cena naked.
And now we have I Feel Pretty which in its core concept sounds like a sketch that might have been from her show. But honestly, even then, it sounds like one of the weaker sketches, and it sounds like it never should have been broadened out to a feature film context. Because what the actual shit?
Looking at the trailer itself, it starts off like it's actually got some really interesting things to say. It's trying to pass the point on that despite how much we are, all about, it's not about what's on the outside, it's about what's on the inside, that's all a bit of bullshit. But then kind of just ends up in a world of this farcical event where she ends up with some kind of concussion from falling off a bike.
Yeah.
And becomes the world's most beautiful woman to herself. And yes, I guess it's meant to be about confidence is beauty, but it kind of just becomes such a joke.
Yeah, so let's unpack this. So at the beginning, the trailer is setting her up as this hideous, ugly woman who hates herself, but she does so by putting down other women. Like, there's a scene where she approaches a traditionally beautiful woman who's crying and saying she has self-esteem issues, and Amy Schumer kind of tears her a new one, because how dare she have self-esteem issues when she's beautiful and Amy Schumer's right there and she's a fucking hideous, gross, awful thing. Like, she is an able-bodied, cis, white woman with blonde hair and fairly traditional beauty standards, just, she's a bit on the heavier side. But she's built this entire brand about her being this hideous, ugly thing that somehow still has sex and is raunchy and fun and one of the dudes. But then the rest of the film seems to be, the entire joke is a woman having confidence in herself.
One of the co-directors of this movie is a guy called Mark Silverstein, who wrote Never Been Kissed, He's Just Not That Into You, and Valentine's Day.
Well, there you go.
Boy.
So I've actually sort of seen a few of these movies because
you date girls.
You get forced to.
Yeah. Oh, hello, the straight.
You get forced to. That's like,
look, everyone, the straight is.
That's kind of like the. That's like the drawbridge you have to cross to better times, and those movies.
Oh no!
Never Been Kissed is like, the prime example of like a hot chick, but she wears glasses, so she's hideous. He's Just That Into You. Everyone's like sort of familiar with that. Valentine's Day, it's a mess. So this guy's kind of made a career out of writing these kind of movies, and this is like his directorial debut. So I imagine this would be kind of like the culmination of his considerable powers of making women feel insecure about absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I'm only just now realizing that it's not at all written by Amy Schumer, which is interesting.
With the unexpected presence of Michelle Williams at a point where you go, is that actually Michelle Williams? What does it look like? Tying back in.
Yeah, I was so confused when you made that joke before because I did not recognize her. I didn't have the Venom moment.
That her bitch. That Michelle
I just thought it was a random actress. Oh, Michelle.
I wrote some notes on this trailer, and my one pro for this movie or this trailer was Michelle Williams.
Well, now my one pro is Michelle Williams and Busy Phillips in the same movie. Noted best friends, Michelle Williams and Busy Phillips.
This is true, yes. We love them.
Well, let's hope there's some more positive aspects to I Feel Pretty when it hits Australian cinemas on the 28th of June. And to check out all those trailers and more, head to youtube.com/MakeTheSwitchAU. The 25th Mardi Gras Film Festival kicks off in Sydney today, and this year's lineup is huge. Running for 15 days, it has something for everyone. BPM, which is set in Paris during the AIDS epidemic of the 1990s, which took home the prestigious Grand Prix at Cannes. Love, Simon, the hotly anticipated queer coming-of-age film starring Nick Robinson. My Days of Mercy, featuring Ellen Page and Kate Mara as women on opposite sides of a protest who fall in love. The documentary McKellen, Playing the Part, which looks at the actor's fascinating life. Beach Rats, which won Best Director at Sundance. The Aussie gay disability body swap film Pulse. And opening night film Ideal Home, which stars Steve Coogan and Paul Rudd as a couple in this hilarious comedy drama. For tickets and more info, head to queerscreen.org.au now.
Netflix surprised everyone during the Super Bowl by announcing the release of the latest Cloverfield installment, and then releasing it at the end of the game. Quality of the film aside, this is game-changing, using the franchise to once again redefine the way a film is publicised. So, what kind of effect will this unconventional release approach have?
I guess my understanding of this was that this was a really good way for Netflix to, A, minimize its marketing spend. If you've seen Bright, I'm really sorry, that movie sucks, but you might have noticed that Netflix did like a ton of marketing for that. So there's like marketing there's still marketing plastered everywhere for it. And like Will Smith was out here and all this shit. They spent a fair buck on it. Cloverfield Paradox, one big ad, one big Super Bowl ad, and they just go, okay, and now it's coming out. So they've basically just gone, okay, we're going to spend all our money in this one ad, and that'll do it. Secondly, this movie's shithouse. This movie is like, from all accounts, a piece of shit. By giving everyone like a last minute notice that this movie's coming out, like maximum hype, reviewers can't get to it in time to like warn everybody that this movie's terrible, and people are just like, it's like a Netflix movie. It's so easy for people just to switch onto it and watch it before they realize, hey, this is crap.
Removing the quality of the film from the equation, because there's been a lot of the discussion around the surprise of the release of this film has been about Paramount's realization and Bad Robot's realization that the film wouldn't be successful at the cinemas, and Netflix being the best option. It's just the decision of how to release the film in that way. I mean, we've gone through the evolution of back 10, 15 years ago, the idea of a film being released at the cinemas and on DVD on the same day was a big deal. The idea of a film being simultaneously released at the cinemas and on Netflix or streaming services is a big deal. But announcing a film will be released the day the film is released, which at the time, like, it was great following Twitter during the game when the announcement happened, and the surprise from everybody, because everyone assumed that the Cloverfield Paradox was going to be bought by Netflix at some point. And that was a rumor that had been going around. But the decision to announce that the day that you released the film had everybody instantly intrigued by it. And Cloverfield as a franchise, it's one of the most extraordinary franchises in terms of its publicity campaigns that I think the cinema's ever had. I mean, the original film having a trailer released during the release of the first Transformers film, a trailer that had no title and no one had ever heard of it. And even people in Paramount were like, we don't know what the fuck this film is. Building that extraordinary campaign to a brilliant film. 10 Cloverfield Lane being announced a month before it comes out. Like, surprise, we've made a new Cloverfield film, and that being a brilliant film. Regardless of the quality of this is a move to getting audiences' attention, getting audience excitement, and the immediate ability for the audiences to access this piece of entertainment is quite something. And I think of everything to do with Cloverfield Paradox, that to me is the most exciting thing about it. Even though the film isn't very good, it's what does that decision in terms of marketing and release mean for the way that film can now be distributed?
Would you consider this to be like a campaign, though, or would you consider this to be like a trick? Because I would kind of see this to be like, especially if Netflix keeps on releasing like movies that aren't particularly good, you can't really repeat the fashion in which this movie was released.
That is true. It is. It's
very clearly a smart move on the behalf of the marketing team of Netflix. Like, they know what they're dealing with, especially after coming off the back of Bright, as we've discussed, and going, okay, so this has had some backlash. How can we do this differently? This is a smart move. It's a sensible move. And and it doesn't necessarily bode well for, I don't think it's something Netflix will be able to do again. I think they've kind of ruined the surprise now, but it's definitely an interesting way to release a film.
Of course it is a trick. I mean, all of this stuff is a trick, but it's one of those things where to get an audience's attention now with so many different platforms to access this content, that was the extraordinary thing about the original Cloverfield campaign, but also like viral campaigns like the Blair Witch Project, like The Dark Knight. The ways to publicize a film are changing so fast because, yes, it's a trick, and maybe it's a trick that Netflix is never going to be able to use again. But it seems to have actually worked in terms of the amount of chatter that came out about it. It is a trick, but realistically, so is Alfred Hitchcock telling people that they can't talk about the end of Psycho. That was a trick and a publicity trick that got that film attention. I just think it's a really exciting move on their part that might open up other possibilities of other ways to marry promotion, release, and content.
It's interesting, but at the same time, I think if Netflix really wanted to maximize the effect of this campaign or trick, if this movie had been like a quality release, an actual good movie, holy fuck, that would have been that would have been game changing and stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
As it is, it's kind of going to be like a law of diminishing returns. So I don't know. On one hand, I kind of applaud Netflix for trying to do something different to maximize the money they spent buying a bad movie. But on the other hand, I also kind of think it was a bit of a waste
The best compliment I've heard about this Cloverfield outing is that it made people want to go back to watch the original one. So
Elizabeth Debicki's in it. She's pretty hot. So
I'm so sorry for her.
And Paramount have said that they expect the next installment of the Cloverfield franchise will go to cinemas. That's their expectation. So it looks like this is just a one-off. A blight on what has so far been otherwise an exemplary franchise.
All of us here at Switch are just a bunch of massive nerds, really, and that takes a surprising amount of work. Now, on one of our recent episodes, my hilariously charming way of cheating in our recommendations was to choose a book rather than a film. So strap in, folks. That's what we're all gonna do now. A bunch of gross nerds choosing their favorite books, because why just spend hundreds of hours watching films when you can spend thousands of hours reading about them? I'll start. So recently, when I did cheat on the recommendation segment, I chose Pictures at a Revolution, which is by Mark Harris, partner of Tony Kushner, one of the greatest playwrights alive. But I've already spoken about that book. So my real choice is Fosse. It's a biography of Bob Fosse, who is one of the greatest directors of all time, by Sam Wasson. I think that's how you say his name. Sorry, Sam. But it is one of the best biographies I've ever read. It is an incredibly long book because it takes place, it covers his entire life, literally, from his early days on the vaudeville circuit and how the highs and lows and traumas of that time kind of infected the rest of his career and hugely shaped who he was as a human being. And then the stories of him actually directing and him creating new work. And it's got one of the most incredibly written introductions, which focuses on Fosse's funeral. And I've read it out loud to multiple friends because I think it's one of the best pieces of writing I've ever read.
Me included.
So beautiful and haunting, and one of the most incredible pieces of writing about grief and about communal grief and celebration and show business. It's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. Daniel currently has my copy and he still hasn't read it because he's a piece of trash. But anyway, speaking of, Daniel, what's your choice?
I agree. Pictures at a Revolution is probably my favorite film book, but I'm going to recommend three. I'm not going to talk about each of them individually, though, because they all kind of represent a particular style of film book that I really enjoy. Those three books are Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho by Stephen Rebello, Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner by Paul M. Salmon, and a seminal film book classic, Hitchcock Truffaut, which is the series of interviews conducted by Francois Truffaut with Alfred Hitchcock. The reason why I bundle these three together is that what these three books represent is a really great distillation on the filmmaking process. So in the case of Future Noir and Alfred Hitchcock and The Making of Psycho, they go through the development of both Blade Runner and Psycho from the very beginning right through to their cultural impact. Future Noir is continuously updated because of how the Blade Runner franchise continues to evolve, and they're quite specific and detailed. And then obviously Hitchcock Truffaut gives you a chance to listen to an artist in the process of discussing his work and the processes that he went through to create the films that he's made. I find that particularly fascinating, about the minutiae of how a film is constructed. So those are my three recommendations.
Good choice. Jake, what do you reckon?
I didn't actually prepare anything for this, but I'm going to look at my bookshelf now, and the first books, the books I can see are Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, and Down and Dirty Pictures by Peter Biskind. Really good if you're into, Hollywood gossip and I guess the type of environments that filmmakers played in. The two books basically trace from, Star Wars to, Miramax and stuff. So, Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and the resurgence in sort of independent filmmaking, profitable independent filmmaking. I'll also throw in Confessions of a Cineplex Heckler by Joe Queenan. He's a reviewer, a critic, I should say. Massive douchebag. He's kind of maybe like a proto Armand White, but with a bit of jackass thrown in as well. So he actually will kind of just be an absolute dickwad in cinemas and try and get a rise out of other patrons, as well as being super knowledgeable about movies and stuff. Really entertaining read. And lastly, Robert Mitchum, I Don't Care, by Lee Server. Robert Mitchum's he's an iconic actor, real wild man as well. So the book is if you're interested in his movies like Cape Fear and Night of the Hunter and his other stuff, Out of the Past, it's awesome. if you're just interested in like a dude who like drank way too much and got into bar fights and put his dick in a hot dog bun and put tomato sauce on it and told director Charles Lawton to eat it.
I mean, who hasn't been there?
And he was like friends with Charles Lawton. It was all friendly. It's just like Charles Lawton was like an openly gay film director and stuff. Rob Mitchum had this over the top macho attitude and stuff. So they're kind of like a really funky odd couple. Anyway, those are my picks.
Charlie, what do you say?
Well, a lot of my books on cinema are very technical based and very nerdy, but there is one which I definitely consider to be a bit of a Bible. It's a really fascinating chronicle of a lot of cinema, in fact, dating back to 1894. So essentially looking at every single year that's come and the highlights of those years. It's called Cinema Year by Year. There's several releases of it now, but it's such a cool way to look at cinema because it's got movie posters, it's got facts, it's got quotes, it's got interesting stats, it's got Oscar details. So it's this really great distillation year by year of cinema and kind of the impact that it has on pop culture, on the world, and kind of its lasting legacy. So it's a really great just overview of everything that cinema has ever done, really.
And beautiful full circle tying it back around moment. I grew up with a copy of Cinema Year by Year, and it was one of the first kind of books that really got me into cinema and got me fascinated with the history of cinema and the history of Hollywood. And one of the films that I discovered thanks to it, because I was always fascinated by this one particular picture, I think I might be making this up, was All That Jazz, Bob Fosse's masterpiece. Boom.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure that's in there.
All the way around.
No, it's a great collection.
It is. It definitely is. But also, we have some great giveaways up for grabs this week. First up, we're giving away 5 double passes to see Finding Your Feet in cinemas. With a superb British cast led by Imelda Staunton, Celia Imrie, Timothy Spall, and Joanna Lumley, Finding Your Feet tells the story of Lady Sandra Abbott, who discovers that her husband of 40 years is having an affair. She seeks refuge with her estranged sister Biff, but when she's dragged along to a community dance class, Sandra finds the courage to reinvent herself.
We're also giving you the chance to win one of 5 double passes to see 222 in cinemas. Australia's Teresa Palmer, who's no stranger to starring in films set at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, stars alongside Game of Thrones' Mikhail Huisman in this gripping thriller. Air traffic controller Dylan Branson is suspended from his job after a brief flash at precisely 2:22 p.m. nearly causes a mid-air collision. Yet, as an ominous pattern of events begins to repeat themselves, Dylan must race to solve the mystery of 222.
Finally, we're giving you the chance to win one of 5 copies of Fear the Walking Dead Season 3 on Blu-ray. As the survivors meet at the US-Mexico border in this post-apocalyptic world, they must attempt to rebuild not only society, but their families as well. To win this and all other great prizes, head to maketheswitch.com.au/comps now.
And before we go, we'd love to offer you some cinematic inspiration, with each of us suggesting one film that you should see this week and why. Now, I'm on my Best Picture Oscar films in the lead up to the 2018 Academy Awards. This week, I'm going with something from 1957, which is Bridge on the River Kwai.
Oh, and yes. Oh, I agree with this one. Oh.
You agree with last week's?
No, did I agree with what was last week's?
Oliver.
Oh, no, I'd agree with that one.
Anyway.
Wrong mate.
This one is an absolute epic war film. It is just immense in its scale and its size. It is 2 hours and 40 minutes long. And I was actually introduced to this film in high school. And I remember it being so long that we actually saw it in several sittings because, we didn't have classes that were long enough to actually watch it in. So we would all huddle around the old, tiny CRT monitors watching this immense film and just kind of in absolute awe of this story, which is just, it's so intense and so in-depth and also so fresh off the back of the actual events that it's so interesting to watch. And also just the one thing which permeates everything I think of Bridge Over the River Kwai is any of the scenes of the troops marching and whistling. Like if you've seen it, you will immediately know what I'm talking about. So yeah. Bridge Over the River Kwai. It is an impressive film. And not only that, won 7 Oscars. 7. So, yeah. If you haven't seen it...
I've never seen it.
Well, if you haven't, then you probably should.
It's one of my huge shames. I actually started it semi-recently, and I got 10 minutes in, and someone called me, and then by the time I finished the phone call, it was like 3 a.m. and I wasn't about to start a 2-hour and 40-minute film at that time.
Well, you only saw Lawrence of Arabia for the first time 6 months ago, so I feel like you're getting there. You're getting there with your David Lean.
Thanks so much, Dad.
But anyway, that is my suggestion for the week. Daniel, over to you. What have you got for us?
I'm recommending a bit of an oddity this week. It is Stanley Kramer's 1963 comedy epic, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. It's one of the strangest films from that big, widescreen, anamorphic cinerama periods of American cinema. It basically stars every single comedian imaginable that was alive in America at the time. So it's a cast of literally hundreds. And it's about this group of strangers driving down, lots of strangers who don't know each other. They're driving down this road in the middle of the desert, and they come across a car crash. And the guy in the car crash says, before he dies, that there is a fortune buried under the big W in a city on the West Coast in the States. So then all these people cross the country to beat each other to get this money. It's basically like Rat Race, but better because it's not Rat Race.
How dare you?
It's just a ridiculously over the top film that just bursts at every single scene. It has a ridiculous cast. It's so funny, but so over the top. It's just this very wonderfully entertaining, strange film. It's a mad, 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 mad world.
It's like the proto Fast and the Furious, isn't it?
If the Fast and the Furious was a lot more funny, yes. And included people like Buster Keaton and Ethel Merman and Mookie Rooney and Spencer Tracy, then yes, it would be. And it's every time you think it can't get any more ridiculous, it just decides to one up itself.
All right, it's over to Jake now. What are you suggesting for us this week?
Okay, well, I talked about Afrofuturism with my Black Panther review. So if you want to see a really, really good Afrofuturist movie that's also a superhero movie, I recommend a Guillermo del Toro film from 2002 called Blade 2, starring Wesley Snipes. I actually wrote about this in an article on Switch called On the Trail of Black Panther. Wesley Snipes at one stage really wanted to be Black Panther, and it never happened for him, so he did Blade. And basically Blade 2 is just all the good stuff, all the stuff that I kind of wanted from Black Panther, like really good fight scenes, really snappy one-liners. Wesley Snipes is just like super charismatic. The cast is awesome. It's got like Ron Perlman and Donnie Yen. Like the movie itself is just like a complete delight. Oh, and at one stage, Guillermo del Toro wanted to have Michael Jackson in it as well, playing a vampire pimp. That's the sort of the level of fun this movie is. So, if you want to watch a really good superhero movie and you're interested in that whole Afrofuturist bent, go and check out Blade 2.
Very good. And Chris, now you've got all your cheating out of your system, I hope. What are you going to recommend this week?
This isn't technically cheating. This is a film. It's just, I don't think you'll like this. Anyway. So.
We'll see. We'll see.
So, in the spirit of the Oscars, in the spirit of Lady Bird, where I've been talking about, some of my favorite films of the year, I thought I'd go uber current. So there we go. We've got films from the 60s, the early 2000s, and now a film from right now, because my choice was reviewed last week on this podcast, and it is Phantom Thread.
Oh.
I wasn't here, so I didn't get to talk about it, but this film is immaculate. It is one of the most perfect films I have ever seen. I sat there enraptured. It was just scene after scene, shot after shot, line after line, where I was like, oh, look, there's one of my favorite things of the year. Oh, look, there's one of my new favorite things. Oh, look, there's another one. It is beautiful. The cinematography, which was done by Paul Thomas Anderson himself, is just incredible. It's one of the most meticulous films I've ever seen, but it is also hilarious. It is so funny all the way through. Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing, Vicky Krieps, Leslie Manville. It's incredible. And it's so fantastic to watch a film that is so clearly in conversation with another classic film of the form, in this case, Rebecca, Hitchcock's film from 1940 something.
So true.
But it's not a remake. It's not even a remix, really. It's this beautiful conversation 70 years apart, almost 80 years apart, where each film is kind of enriched and impacted in some way by the other. And it's fantastic. It's so beautiful, so immaculate, so meticulous. I have absolutely nothing but the highest of respect for Paul Thomas Anderson. And that film is in cinemas now. You have no excuse. Go see it.
I can't criticize it. It's a film and you recommended it. And so you haven't actually broken any rules. That's fine.
What?
And more importantly, we haven't discussed it in this section of the podcast. So you are actually in my good books this week.
This is so strange.
Crazy, I know. Well, some great suggestions this week, and you can find the links to all the articles we've talked about on this week's podcast at maketheswitch.com.au. Please subscribe to SWITCHCast on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to rate us. And stay in touch on Twitter. I'm at Charlie_David. Daniel.
At Daniel Lamon.
Jake.
At Jake Chatty.
And Chris.
At Chris C. Edwards.
Like it, follow it. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at MakeTheSwitchAU to stay up to date with all the latest reviews, news, trailers, and giveaways.
And you can find all the notes and links to everything we've discussed on this week's podcast, as well as other episodes, by visiting switchcast.com.au.
On next week's show, I'll share my verdict on the Oscar-nominated A Fantastic Woman.
Plus, we'll be hitting the dance floor to check out Finding Your Feet. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you all next week.